Coming up on USL Pro Weekly, Orlando City continues to cruise as the other contenders remain in hot pursuit. How far can the Lions carry their undefeated streak? OKC Energy FC takes a big victory at home. We talk with Captain Michael Thomas about his goal and carrying momentum forward. The Richmond Kickers are set to honour legendary goalkeeper Ronnie Pascale on Saturday. We catch up with the three-time goalkeeper of the year. All of this and much more on the latest edition of USL Pro Weekly. Welcome in to the latest edition of USL Pro Weekly. My name's Nicholas Murray. Very pleased to be joined this week by David Wagner. Hey, David.
Hey, Nicholas. How you doing this week?
Doing pretty good. We a lot of exciting stuff leading up to the World Cup going on around the Tampa area. We had you and I both got the chance to go and see Japan play Costa Rica on Monday, so that was very entertaining. Very entertaining.
Yeah,
indeed.
not just the Tampa area, the whole Florida area. You got Japan back here this week. You have the U.S. Here on Saturday playing Nigeria, so we'll have England, some USL alums. Yep, England and Miami. That's right. And I don't think there's any USL alums there, but in Jacksonville there will be.
Yeah, certainly will be. And I mean, Tim Howard. You look at guys like Graham Zusi and a young star like DeAndre Edlin having the chance to go to his first World Cup after being a PDL All-League selection a couple of years ago. Terrific story for him.
Indeed.
But a lot to get to in USL Pro as well. And I think the place to start is at the top of the table, where Orlando City continues its undefeated start to the season. It's now 12 games undefeated, 9 wins, 9-0-3, the Lions are, as they took a 2-0 win against the Charleston Battery. Wasn't a vintage performance.
No.
And I think the Lions could be considered somewhat fortuitous to get out of this game with a shutout, because the Battery early in the second half certainly had their chances to get back into the game. But this is the mark of what good teams do, as we've talked about in the past. They find ways to win even when they're not playing at their best.
Yeah.
And in that regard, it was still an impressive performance by the Lions.
Yeah, they ground out a win. I mean, this is something similar, I think, that they were doing at the beginning of the season, where they were coming out and I don't think they were playing their best soccer, but they were able to walk away with the points. Sometimes it was 1 point, sometimes it was 3. So they found ways to get on the board. Obviously, they haven't lost this season. But they have played better as of late. I think that they've been clicking a little bit more on all cylinders in the last few weeks. And then this performance, you can't call it a step back because you still won.
Yeah.
But I think it's a situation where it's a long season. You're not going to come out and have your best performance every week. So to come out there and not perform your best and still get the 3 points is pretty impressive. I was at the match. Orlando had a little bit of it early. Then Charleston got into the game, and I think Charleston had the second half, and I think they were very unlucky not to walk away with at least a point in this scenario. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you can definitely point to Mamadou Diouf's hit post as kind of the key moment there. But there were other moments where Miguel Gallardo was forced into good saves, as he has been often this season.
He has, yes.
He's really stepped up to the challenge. And that's obviously been a big positive for them, where the defensive line for Orlando hasn't necessarily been as settled as Adrian Heath might have liked it to be.
Yeah, and look, going out there, the defense was a bit 6s and 7s at times, but Charleston ultimately didn't make them pay. At the same side of the coin, both of Orlando's goals I thought were pretty lucky. I mean, the first one was a little bit of a scramble, and they put it in, and then the second one obviously was a goalkeeper error. Straight up, and that's what led to the goal. So, unlucky on both of them for Charleston.
I think a big moment for Corey Herzog, though. It was a very instinctive finish for him.
Yeah.
But just to get that first goal,
yes.
He scored in the Open Cup previously, but to get that first goal in USL Pro play, a big moment, an important thing for him to kind of, maybe now some of the pressure will come off his shoulders a little bit, and he'll be the player that we know that he is.
Yeah, I was chatting a little bit with some of the Orlando folks after the match, and we talked about how this is really big for Corey, because obviously, you look back 2 seasons and he single-handedly, I shouldn't say single-handedly, but he was a huge factor in that Wilmington Hammerheads team that got all the way to the championship match. Last season, he goes to the MLS. It doesn't quite work out for him there. He comes back to USL Pro. He's in Orlando. Obviously a great opportunity, because this is a huge audition for all these guys this year in front of Coach Adrian Heath. So I'm not saying that this goal certainly isn't something that's going to put him over the edge, but it might give him some positive momentum and some confidence to go forward and find the form he had. Because if he can recapture that Wilmington form, then he is a realistic MLS guy again.
Yeah. Now, they're going to be without a couple of players this weekend, key players too, with MVP candidate Kevin Molino, the league's leading scorer, and Darwin Seven both going off to international duty. Some pretty cool opportunities for these guys. I mean, I think Trinidad and Tobago, going off to play against Argentina, El Salvador going off and playing a couple of really good games as well. So it's a great opportunity for those guys to shine on the international stage as we build up 9 days away now from the World Cup.
Indeed. Anytime you can trot out there against Lionel Messi, it's a good time, right?
Exactly. So that should be a lot of fun for them. But it does mean we'll have an interesting game this Saturday as the Montreal Impact Reserves visit Disney and the ESPN Wild World of Sports. Now, behind Orlando, we still have this battle for second place, and it's somewhat starting to heat up because you have all of the teams that are competing for this. The Richmond Kickers, LA Galaxy 2, Sacramento was idle this week, but they've now got a couple of games in hand, and they're still in it. And Wilmington all pick up important points. Richmond picks up 4 points from its 2 games. LA Galaxy, I think, with maybe one of the more impressive wins of the weekend, going on the road against a Sounders reserves team that hadn't lost yet this season, taking 3 points away from them and remaining close enough to Orlando that should the Lions' form slip a little bit, they'll be right back in contention for the regular season title.
Yeah, I think so. It was a huge win for LA going on the road, a very difficult place to play. The Sounders reserves are always up for it. Certainly not a pushover. Obviously, I've already played one of our sides this year and got a win. So to come in, go on the road to Seattle and get the points, very impressive. Chandler Hoffman obviously scoring this year, does it again. Fantastic match for them. Also, you alluded to Richmond. I was really impressed with that. So I sat down and, I was on Saturday, I was at the Orlando game, but Friday I sat down and I watched that whole match. And Rochester came out, and I thought Rochester played well. They came at Richmond. I thought they were very unlucky not to come away with 3 points. But, tip of the cap to Richmond. They came out and they played their game. They were very organized, very defensive minded. As it's not a knock on them. I think it's a really important thing when you have to, you realize that you're going to be playing 2 games in a weekend like that. It's difficult to come out and say, oh, I'm going to have the all-out attack, because then you're just going to be dead by game 2.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, we've been hearing the chirping from up in Richmond about the schedule, but if you look at what they've been able to accomplish over the past couple of weeks, where, the schedule has been pretty difficult for them, but they've been able to come out and take victories. They've been able to take points from all of these games, and they've been able to stay in touch while at the same time setting themselves up for a home tie with the New England Revolution in the 4th round of the US Open Cup. So everything seems to be going, now that they've got through this stretch of games, things are really setting up nicely for the Kickers. We'll talk a little bit more about them later, but they had a dramatic winner against the Harrisburg City Islanders. Oklahoma City Energy had a dramatic winner against a very good New York Red Bulls reserve side on Saturday night. And you could just feel the weight lift off everyone's shoulders. The reaction, obviously, the fact that it happened toward the end with the supporter section was perfect, because the visual, the celebration, but the fact that it was Michael Thomas, who had such a good game and such a positive game, hit the post early in the game, and really was the person that I had hoped that we would see for most of this season, really controlling the center of the midfield and playing an integral role in the side's attack. Terrific for him to be the guy who grabs, the captain of the team, grabs the goal that gives them their first home win. Yeah,
it's a fantastic opportunity for him. Obviously, he's came up and has a great background being with Sporting Kansas City. Didn't quite work out for him there, but they let him go with the opportunity to say, hey, you still might have it at some point, but go down, do your thing in Oklahoma City, sign there, and see what can go from there. He's still a very young player, still a very talented player. So it's great for him. It's great for the team. You talked about that collective weight that's sort of been lifted off of that Oklahoma City side, and it's just absolutely huge. To get your first home victory for any team is big, especially if you're an expansion team and it's literally your first home victory ever. So really important for that team, not just because of what it means to them, but also what it means for them in the playoff race this year and getting back into that.
Exactly. And the fact that you can look at the standings and you can look at their record, and it's 3-7. And that's not the best record in the world, obviously. But the fact remains that they are only 3 points out of a playoff place. And if they can build on this, put into a run of form, then there's no reason why they can't get back into the playoff conversation. Still plenty of time left in the season. Still another 18 games to go for them. So they're barely past a third away through the season. So a lot of time left, a lot of home games left for them. They're not in as bad a situation as they seem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's still opportunities for them to get back into it. They've showed some really bright spots this year. They've gone through some of their opening season lumps, and I think they're coming together stronger as a team at this point. But they're still right in it, and they still have a lot of possibilities. They have some guys that can score some goals, and they have some talented players out there. They're not. It's not just a complete team of rookies. So they're going to pull it together, I think.
Well, to talk a little bit more about the season opening, so the home opener, the home victory, the first home victory for Energy FC, we got the chance to talk with Michael Thomas earlier this week, and that interview will be coming up just after this break. Well, we're very pleased to be joined now by the captain of OKC Energy FC, Michael Thomas. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the first home win on Saturday night. I'm sure that's got to be a huge relief to you and to the team to finally give the great support that you've had at Pribble Stadium the reward of 3 points.
Absolutely. I was asked after the game, what the one word would be to describe the feeling that us players, all had after the game, and it was relief. It was one of those where, we feel like we've been putting the work in and, been working so hard to the point where we weren't getting rewarded for it. And to go 3 games at home without a win was really frustrating for us. We wanted to make our fans proud and show them what we're truly capable of. And to get that 3 points against New York Red Bulls was huge for us. It was huge for the organization, and I think it was an exciting match too. So I think more fans are gonna get out to the stadium sooner, quicker, and give us a lot of support.
Definitely, you couldn't ask for a more dramatic ending. I mean, it was a terrific delivery by Christian Duke on the corner, but were you surprised that you were able to find that much space at the back post?
Yes, I was. We had been marked pretty tough all night, and with it being in stoppage time, I wasn't sure how much time was on the clock. I was fortunate to get away from my man, and like you said, Duke, you put a perfect ball in, and I was just fortunate to get on the end of it. So it was something that we had drawn up as a team, and luckily, like I said before, it worked out.
It seemed as though the team was clicking pretty nicely, though. I mean, you hit the post in the first half, you had other opportunities. Was the sense of relief not just that you won, but the fact that you were able to grab that late goal when it seemed like things weren't quite going to go your way again?
Yeah, we had a very good performance midweek against Arizona. Unfortunately, we were playing down a man, and that was because of me. But we showed a lot of grit, a lot of character in that performance, and that translated into the game Saturday against Red Bull as well. We had a lot of guys who, a lot of fighters on the field, and we were really working for each other. Like I said before, we really wanted to put in a good performance at our home stadium, and to come out with 3 points with the way that we played, controlling the game for the most part, it feels very good right now. And we think the page is beginning to turn, and that we're hopefully starting a little bit of a run now.
You've obviously had a tough spell, but on the flip side of that, the silver lining is that you're still only 3 points out of a playoff position as it stands. You mentioned going on a run. You go on the road this weekend to the North Carolina to play Wilmington and Charlotte. Do you feel as though there's a domino effect that could take effect here and give you guys the opportunity to pick up points in both of these games?
Yeah, we hope so. Right now it's way too early in the season to look at the table and panic. Like I said before, we know that we have a very good team, and it's our job right now to pick up points. And it's winning is contagious and losing is contagious. So we went on that little bit of a bad run. We were playing well for the most part at that time. We had a couple unfortunate losses in there. But this past week, we really feel like we're turning things around, and you can see it within the team. You can see the confidence beginning to come back. So hopefully we make a point this weekend, against Wilmington and Charlotte, and then we can go from there.
You've obviously got a couple of former Wilmington players on the squad. You've got obviously Gareth Evans, your vice captain. You've got Kyle Grieg, Stephen Perry, all potentially set to make their returns this Friday night. Are those guys looking forward to it a little bit more than now that they get to go up against their former team?
Yeah, we've been hearing about Wilmington from the beginning of the season with, Al, Greg, and Gaz and Perry, like you mentioned. We know that they're a good team. They're on a bit of a run as well. But we're going there full of confidence right now, and we're those guys are definitely excited to get back there. And we are as a team as well. So we're looking forward to putting in a good performance and hopefully coming away with 3 points.
What's the biggest thing that you've learnt about yourself and that you think people in the locker room have learnt about themselves as you've gone through this expansion season with the Energy?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned for myself is to be as patient as possible. And I think that's what the team has done too. We know that it's going to be a gradual process this year. There's a lot of things that still need to be learned, as a whole organization. And we're all going through it together. And it's not time to panic when we're losing, and it's not time to rejoice when we're winning. It's one of those to be patient and stick to our game plan, stick to the identity that we have as a team, and go along with it throughout the whole season. And if we stay true to our structure and true to our organization and keep the character that we've had, then I think that we can have a very solid year.
What's the biggest goal? What's the biggest thing? What's the biggest key for this weekend and finding success on the road?
I think the biggest thing is preparation. We've had 3 games this past week, and playing 2 games in 2 days is going to be tough. But at the same time, preparation and the depth we have a very good team. We have a deep squad, and we know that we're going to have to be using a lot of players this weekend. So, it's preparation. It's using our depth, and it's remaining confident too, because we need to go there, and we know it's not an excuse that we have 2 days and 2 games. Unfortunately, we can't control that, so we're still looking to get as many points on the road as we can, and we need to make sure that we're all ready, prepared, and confident going into the weekend.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it, and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, talking to Michael, we saw the sense of relief in the stands and on the field, but the sense of relief and the energy it seems to be giving them as they prepare for their road trip this weekend is definitely palpable. It's that's got to be such a huge moment, and for it to be him to score the goal, the team's captain, the first signing, obviously a huge moment.
Yeah, he just absolutely big for them. You heard him talk about how important it was for the team. So huge for the side, and they'll go on the road and see if they can keep that run, that form moving this weekend.
Now, the other thing we talked about, obviously, is this road trip that they've got coming up to North Carolina, and this game on Friday night is a really fascinating one because you have a Wilmington Hammerhead side that has gone 4 games in a row, 4 wins in a row. They've got games in hand, but if they win those games in hand, they're going to be in the conversation for a top 2, top 3 spot. And at the same time, you've got the guys from Oklahoma City, like a Gareth Evans, like a Kyle Gregg, like a Stephen Perry, who are all going back to face their former side. So the storylines on this one are really, really exciting. It's the only game on Friday night. It should be well worth watching.
I think so. There's been some guys that have really shown well, I think, for Wilmington this season, and we came in not really knowing a lot about this Wilmington team. Maybe you had heard of some of the guys that were going on loan for TFC. Some of the guys have stepped up big. You look at Manny Aparicio. I think he's had a good season. There's been some good moments, but at the same time, you talk about what they lost last year. So you talk about a Gareth Evans, a Daniel Steeris is with LA this season. So there's players that were big for them last season that aren't here this year. So it's really starting fresh, and this Wilmington team has been a really pleasant surprise, at least for me, because I didn't really know what to expect for them. I can't say that I had high hopes or low expectations or anything. I didn't really know much about them. It's such a young team, and it seems like they're Coach David Irving has really made the right moves in assembling this side, and that he's put together a group of guys that have gelled real well and are really blossoming here.
The thing I've always felt about Wilmington in the past was that they were the sort of side that was every year there was going to be this turnover of players because there were going to be players that were going to move on to bigger and better things potentially. You see a guy like Luke Mulholland now with Real Salt Lake and how well he's playing for them. Obviously got his professional start start with the Hammerheads.
Yep.
And there's always been this churn, and it's been a chemistry experiment for David to try and put together a new group, because he's practically having to do that every year. Sometimes it goes perfectly and you get the championship run that they had 2 years ago. Other times it doesn't quite fit together and you have them missing the playoffs by a point last season. So this team, though, it seems as though there are pieces on this team that could be pieces because of the new ownership for the long term. And you look at guys that they've brought in, the guys from Toronto, definitely great. Jordan Hamilton, Quillan Roberts, again, very solid in goal. Manny Aparicio, just a terrific opening goal against the Eagles. But you look at some of the other guys. Cody Arnu, I think, is going to be a player that might be there for a little bit of time. You look at a guy that they picked up in Stephen Miller, who has 3 goals now, and he's tied for the league lead. He's a guy that they picked up off their open tryouts earlier this year. There was a terrific story on him on Saturday. If people should go and look this up in the Star News Online website, the Wilmington's newspaper, definitely worth going and finding out about Miller's story, because he's been an absolute revelation for this side. I mean, to go from an open tryout to a pretty consistent position in the starting 11 is a terrific story.
No, it's nothing to sniff at. I mean, we have good stories all the time about guys that maybe came up and picked up in our combine, but those guys are a little bit more of a known commodity at that point. They maybe weren't ready for the MLS draft, but they were guys that really excelled at the college and the PDL level. So they came in and we knew what they were about, and then they had that opportunity, that platform. But to come in from an open tryout like that, it's just a fantastic story.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Saturday night, Oklahoma City goes on and they'll face Charlotte, and this is a Charlotte team that it's struggling right now, and it's tough for them. They obviously pulled back a late goal, but it never felt as though they were going to get a second against Wilmington and find an equalizer. There's obviously some stuff going on here. They've got the same type of issues that Wilmington had last season, where they had to bring in a few new faces. But the thing that surprised me is defensively they don't seem quite as solid as they did last season. And maybe it's the absence of Fajilo Okioma, who moved on, but there's something that isn't quite clicking for them right now.
Yeah, and it's not just him. They lost a handful of players. Talk about a Stephen Okai or some of the other guys that were on that team last year. Obviously, when you have a change in the back and Eric Reed, that's huge. He was such a consistent part of what they did from a defensive and organizational standpoint. So I don't think you can discount some of the players that they lost last year and the impact that it's going to have on the organization. I think looking at this Charlotte team and the difference from last year, we've mentioned it before in the context of Dayton this year, but for me, Charlotte last year was always that team that was going to get something out of a match. I think Dayton was a little bit different. Dayton was even more volatile, because they could go out and they could win 4-0 and then they could lose 4-0.
But Charlotte had much greater consistency.
Correct, and Charlotte was never out of it. I feel like we could sit here and count the number of games on our hand last season that Charlotte was maybe down 1-0 and got a late goal to tie or got a late winner. They were never out of a match. They were always in it. They never came out and dominated anyone last year, but it was a situation where they were just always in the match, and it was always competitive every game they played last year.
Looking at talking about Oklahoma City earlier, Charlotte's in a similar position. Obviously, they're going through a bad patch right now, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they'll be in the playoffs at the end of the season, just because they're not that far away from Orange County in 8th spot.
Yeah, and obviously, Coach Mark Steffens is not a greenhorn. He knows what he's doing, so he picked these players for a reason. I have the utmost confidence in Mark's ability to form a side and play competitive soccer all year. I think that it's a similar thing where you can't just discount him and rule him out for this year.
Yeah, and you look at some of the guys that they brought in, like Wells Thompson and Zach Boggs, and I think those are the two of the key guys that I think we're probably going to be looking at to step up and use their experience to try and help the Eagles break this streak and get back on a winning track.
And then you have a guy like Giuseppe Gentile, who's on loan there from Chicago, who's obviously a talented player. So they have some pieces.
Certainly do. A team that also has some pieces but still can't quite find a winning formula is the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And they came very close to their first win of the season on Sunday night in the first Keystone Derby. And it took a fabulous goal by Jimmy McLaughlin to earn a draw for Harrisburg. But is it symptomatic of the way Pittsburgh's season's going? And somewhat Harrisburg, where they gave up Saturday, they gave up the late winner to Richmond in stoppage time. We thought Harrisburg was turning things around, but now they get 1 point out of 2 games this weekend, and suddenly they're still 4 points back of the playoffs and needing to kick into gear a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Winning's a habit, and they're a little rusty right now. They haven't really tasted it this season. So, going out there, and it's tough. It's tough. You're in a locker room and you have a mood, and there's been a vibe that's going on there this whole season where nothing's gone right. There's been some very difficult calls against them this year. There's some difficult things that have occurred on the field. On paper, this is still one of the best teams in the league. So I think it's not even a situation like Rochester last year where it seemed like Rochester, they couldn't get a break. At least Rochester had a win at some point earlier in the year. This team is more talented on paper than Rochester was last year. They have a lot of good players. They have some great players on loan too from Houston. It's just nothing has gone right for them at all this year, and they and then as far as their ability to get it going offensively, it's just been a little stunted. So it's tough. I mean, we're getting towards that point in the season where with the number of teams in this league and how the playoffs are, it's difficult to rule anyone out of it until a certain point. When it's July, and if we were still in the same position, I would say it's done, but they have to get something going. They have to get some momentum.
At a certain point right now, though, we were looking at this at the start of June last year, and you can definitely see the top 6 teams have created a little bit of separation from the bottom 8. And so it might be the teams that are out of the playoffs, maybe the best that they can hope for at this point might be a seventh or 8th seed.
That's all. I mean, look, you can't sit here and say that Pittsburgh's done for the year.
Certainly not.
No, I mean, I think that, especially with the talent on that team.
With the talent they had, and you remember that this was about the time last year. I mean, it was a little bit earlier than this, but this was about the time last year when they put in a 10-game undefeated streak and made a big shunt up the table. And so they start off June, they're undefeated in June. It gets to the end of June undefeated, and then let's see where we are.
But it's not, for me, it's not just undefeated. There needs to be some wins in there.
Of course.
A handful of more draws.
I think that's an assumption that you're going to be winning a few of these games. You're not going to be. You're not going to be getting 7 consecutive draws.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. Obviously, we're in a position in the league office where we don't root for anybody, but there's a lot of good guys there, and I like to see everybody do well, and it's nice and balanced. So I hope for their sake that they can turn things around, because it's just good. I mean, with that team and what they've done in that city and the fan support there, they deserve it.
Certainly. Harrisburg, they go on the road again this weekend, and they get another matchup with Richmond, a chance to maybe get a little bit of revenge for the 3-2 defeat that they suffered at Skyline Sports Complex this past Saturday. However, if they're going to do that, it will be the first time in over 18 months that Richmond will have lost at home. And the Kickers are honouring their legendary goalkeeper, Ronnie Pascale, who made more than 300 appearances for the club. He's the all-time leading appearance record holder for the Kickers, and just a fantastic way for the Kickers to pay tribute to him. Now, a couple of seasons removed from his retirement to the end of the 2012 season.
Yes, obviously, USL legend, a Kickers legend. Just fantastic for so many years. So to be able to come back and have this sort of honor and this opportunity is just fantastic. And then, it can't come at a better time. Richmond is just playing great. We talked about what they did at Rochester a little bit before, but we didn't really get into Harrisburg, and that was a great game. They just traded blows essentially as far as
especially
scoring goals
in the second half.
Yep. And then to get that late winner, huge, and some really nice finishes as well.
Yeah, I mean the first goal I thought by Jared Jeffrey was fantastic. Just a really well timed strike. But then the other 2 goals, where you have Kyle Porter setting up Matt Delacat with a perfect low angled cross for a close range finish, and then a great through ball by Luke Vercalone, and a pinpoint finish by Porter into the bottom right corner of the net. You couldn't ask for 3 better goals and 3 better different types of goals to score, and that kind of shows how well Richmond's playing right now is that they can score goals on you in any way that you want.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the case, whether it's coming down and bringing it out wide and whipping it in, or just pushing it right up the middle. They're definitely scoring them all types of ways, and it's all types of people. I mean, you look at it. You just mentioned Delicott before, and it's just sort of been a ageless wonder at this point. It feels like Delicott's been around the USL scene for a while, and he's still out there getting it done. So it doesn't matter if it's him or if it's Michael Seaton's down on loan or whoever it is, somebody's going to score for them. It seems like that.
Yeah, I mean, Porter's come in when Kyle Porter's come in on loan from DC United. He's played very well for them. They've got Jared Jeffrey getting I think it was his first goal of the season for them this week. I
believe so.
And then Delicott, his 6th goal of the season, and he's really done well. I mean, he's putting himself, and the reason he's done well is he's put himself in the right positions where he's getting good service from the kickers wide players.
Yeah, that's certainly been the case. He's been in the right place all year, and he has that ability to make stuff happen. It's not just him finishing goals; he can create them and set them up as well. So he's definitely a multi-dimensional player. Well,
one person who's been on the sidelines this year but has been enjoying watching the Kickers play is Ronnie Pascale, and we got a chance to talk with the Kickers legend earlier this week. Well, we're very pleased to be joined now by Ronnie Pascale, the Richmond Kickers all-time leader in appearances, who is set to be honoured this Saturday as they host the City Islanders. Ronnie, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
This has obviously got to be a big thing for you this Saturday, the team honouring you after what was an incredible career for them over 13 seasons. What does it mean to you personally that the team is doing this?
It's still kind of surreal. I don't think it's really settled in yet. It's a huge honor, and I'm very humbled to have it happen. I was really lucky, growing up 14 years ago, dreaming to play professional soccer, and there weren't really as many opportunities back then as there are now. So to get an opportunity to get with the Kickers after my first year in Atlanta, and to get with an organization that's as steady and as consistent as they are, and a great fan base and a great organization. I really was lucky to end up in Richmond when I did. Fortunately, I was able to play for a lot longer than I ever thought I would. And at the end of the day, I got paid to play the game that I love, and it's very humbling to have this happen Saturday night.
What was it that you put down to your consistency, especially being as good as you were for such a long period of time?
A lot of it, I think, was just hard work and dedication. I grew up, I was short for being a goalkeeper, and my whole life I had people telling me I'd never be able to make it. I'd never make it at a Division I college, and then I went on to play at Furman for 4 years, and then, I had no chance of playing professionally. So I always kind of used that to fuel me, and, my mentality was always, it's all right to make a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, but don't make the same mistake twice. Growing up, I had a lot of great trainers and coaches. Mike Jacobs is the head coach at University of Evansville. Got to spend a couple summers training with John Bush and Eric Botter in Charlotte. And just the, kind of the lessons that you learn training with those guys, kind of that old school mentality of just put your head down and work a little bit harder, and that'll carry you a pretty long way. And, it seems to be working for Bushy, and I think it worked pretty well for me also.
Is it strange seeing John Bush still out there and still chugging along in MLS?
It is. It's great, and I've been living vicariously through him the last couple of years. He's doing a phenomenal job, and if you know John, you know that's what he's going to do. He's about as true a professional as you can get. He's very, I guess, fortunate that he landed in a very good situation as well, but. He's the consummate professional. He takes care of himself, and, he kind of just puts his head down and works like he needs to.
Now, obviously, since you've retired, there have been a couple of guys who have come down from DC United to fill your shoes. Andrew Dykstra last year and Joe Willis this year. I know you're still going out to the games. What have you made of them as Andrew won Goalkeeper of the Year last year, and Joe is looking very solid so far this season?
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I actually coached Andrew for 5 years at VCU. So it was really cool for me to the year I stepped away was the year that he came in. And it was, in a way, kind of like seeing my protege stepping between the posts for me, which it made the transition, I think, a little bit easier. I've always known that he was a fantastic athlete, and he's developed into a very, very good goalkeeper. And I think we all saw that in Richmond last year. And now DC is seeing that this year as he kind of beat out Joe for that number 2 spot. And from what I've seen of Joe, he's a very solid goalkeeper. And that's what you want to look for. You want to look for a guy who's really not going to make a lot of mistakes and lose games for you, but someone who's going to be consistent and keep you in games. Especially when you have a team like the Kickers, that's what you need, and he seems to be doing a great job with that.
Do you still enjoy going out to the games? This is a different experience watching from the stands now?
It is. Like I said, last year really wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I think it was really, I knew it was time to step away. It started to get hard once the season started to wind down and you got towards the playoffs and the game started to mean a little bit more. And that's when the competitive juices started to go and you really wanted to get out there and play again. Honestly, this year it's been a little bit tougher where, I'm really starting to miss it a little bit more, but it's fun to go and to just kind of to sit back and to watch the games kind of take place in front of you and to see the fans, how they interact with the players and how enthusiastic they've been. The crowds out at University of Richmond or out at City Stadium have been getting better and better, and they really seem to be pushing the team forward in the right direction.
You made more than 300 appearances for the Kickers. Are there any particular games that really stand out for you?
Yeah, I would say there's probably a good handful. Playing LA Galaxy a couple weeks after they announced that David Beckham was going to the team in the Open Cup, and we ended up beating them 1-0 at home was a fantastic game. I remember in 2002 playing Rochester in the semifinals, home and away, and the away trip up in Rochester, we beat them in a shootout. And that was my first year as a starter for the Kickers, and that was a pretty special night. Definitely winning my first championship in 2006. That's always going to stick out there, and especially for me, it was 3 days after my son was born. So there's definitely a lot of really special memories out there.
You're staying involved with the Kickers, from what I've heard. You're working with the youth academy now. What's that like to kind of stay connected to the club and hopefully bring through some of the players that are going to be playing for the team maybe 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah, it's great. I've always, even when I was in high school, I coached some of my local youth teams, so I've always been involved as a coach, and being able to kind of keep in the Kickers organization. I've been training the Kickers Academy goalkeepers a little bit for a couple of years. And then I've also helped out with my daughter Tabitha's team a little bit, and now my son's playing U9 next year, so I'm going to help out with them a bit as well. So, it's great to stay involved, and I think that's one of the things that really separates the Kickers from other clubs is kind of that grassroots community aspect that they really go after. And you have these kids that show up to games and they see the pro guys playing and they're their youth coaches. And, even for me, it's been 2 years since I played, and you go out to the field, the kids still remember who I am. It's a pretty cool relationship that we have with the fans. And it's great to see these kids that kind of develop and grow up throughout the system and then hopefully put on a pro uniform.
You played for 13 seasons, you played more than 300 games, you won 3 championships with the Kickers. What's the one thing that you hope the fans remember you for?
Well, that's a good question. I think for me it was really just the consistency, and that I always did my best.
Well, Ronnie, we know that you always did your best on the field. We know you're doing your best off the field now to help the next generation come through. And we hope you have a great night this Saturday as the Kickers host the City Islanders. Many thanks for joining us, and have a great Saturday.
All right, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Obviously, with the Kickers honouring Ronnie this weekend, this Saturday, it's going to be a tremendous occasion at City Stadium. I'm sure there'll be a bumper crowd out there to honour him, and it should be a really entertaining game if last week's game against the City Islanders is anything to judge by, because Harrisburg, they want to attack, they want to play an entertaining style of soccer, and that could lead to another very open game as we saw in their 5-goal thriller this past weekend. That's definitely one of my games to watch this Saturday night.
Yes.
But it's definitely a varied and interesting slate where you've got battles up and down the divisions, and you've got a lot of teams at the top playing teams at the bottom. And there are opportunities here. You look at an Arizona United. They go on the road to Sacramento, to Hughes Stadium, the last hurrah at Hughes for Republic FC. They've got a chance to kind of get themselves back into the playoff picture and get themselves a little bit closer to Republic FC, the side that they beat for their first win in franchise history just about a month ago.
Yeah, fantastic opportunity for them to go out there and get something done. They were able to go out and get that win, but this will be another big weekend where they need to come out and shine, because getting those points will be really important.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of weeks. I mean, you look at the loss to Chivas USA, you look at the loss to Orange County this past weekend, and the goals have dried up a little bit. The positive thing I can say about it is the chances haven't.
Yep.
I mean, Patrick McLean had to make, I think, 7 saves to earn his shutout for the Blues, and there were definitely chances being created. You feel as though if Arizona finds the net with one of those, then it'll start to click back into gear and everyone's head will lift, just as it did for Oklahoma City this past weekend.
I think so. We've talked about how impressed we've been with them all year, just because how the team was put together, the amount of time they had to get ready, and they've come together so nicely and got some very important wins. So, this weekend, they're definitely going to want to get back on track here. It'll be important, but not the easiest place to go.
The Impact Reserves, as we mentioned earlier, they travel to face Orlando, who will be without Kevin Molino and Darwin Sellen. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup the Impact field. Obviously, this is the last weekend of MLS before the teams before the World Cup break. But Montreal has a very good youth academy, has a solid PDL team. It'll be interesting to see what sort of lineup they send down to Orlando, because they've competed very hard, and they competed very hard against Rochester last season.
Yes.
And certainly could provide a test for the Lions backline.
I think so. I think they're going to come down, and it's going to be they put a lot of effort and development into their academy up there, and they have a lot of young guys that they're excited about. And then you're going to mix in that you might have some guys that they just need to get some minutes here this weekend. So I don't think they're going to bring a slouch team down. For Orlando, they're going to be missing 2 important pieces of their spine going forward.
Yep.
So, I think this is going to be a really good matchup. If they hadn't been missing those guys, then I would say it's going to be tough for Montreal, given the type of lineup that Orlando trots out there. But I think that with those absences, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for Orlando.
It'll make it interesting to see what type of system Adrian Heath chooses to play with Seren and Molino.
That's a good point, yeah.
Because the guy, I'm really interested to see how he steps up, because you would think he might have a bigger role in a game like this, is Adama Mbengwe, who's been playing really great for most of the season, and he just brings that energy, he brings that creativity, and he has such a good ability to finish chances when they're offered to him, that he's the guy that I think is going to be critical to this. You might end up seeing, I could easily see Orlando switching to a 4-4-2 in this and playing both Herzog and Shin up front with Molino absent. So, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think that'll be interesting. I agree, because 4-4-2 sounds right, because then you can get one of those guys to, intermittently drop down and provide that little link to the midfield. Obviously, usually have Molino is sort of that guy that pushes the ball forward and connects it with the guys up top a lot of times. So, who's going to... You can't just fill his shoes. You can't just fill his shoes this weekend.
You can't fill Kevin Molino's shoes, but I think if you're going to do that, I think Herzog is probably the guy that can provide that link.
Yeah.
A little bit. His touch seems to be very good. He's been doing all of the right things except for find the back of the net, it seems like. And so if you have him drop back into the hole a little more, and then Chin, as he does so well, look for the spaces in behind, then that's probably the combination that you could look for Orlando to kind of at least mitigate the fact that Molino and Sellen won't be there.
I think so.
Now, out west, we already talked about Sacramento and Arizona. It should be a terrific game at Hughes. There's also a couple of interesting games as the Dayton Dutch Lions head to the West Coast, and I'm in particular interested in their game against Orange County on Saturday night. Orange County coming off a nice win, 2-0 win against Arizona this past weekend. Dayton looking for something. They need something to snap out of the funk that they're in. Obviously, they lost 1-0 to Rochester on Sunday in their last game, a game that wasn't helped by a 2.5-hour lightning delay.
No.
So and I think that definitely affected I think that affected the Dutch Lions because it seemed like Rochester went up, Dayton certainly pushed back, but once the lightning delay happened, it felt like that took the energy out of the game, and there wasn't that. The last 20 minutes or so weren't as eventful as they might have been had the game not been interrupted. This is a big opportunity for Dayton, though, to gain ground on the Blues for that 8th and final playoff place, and just to try and get out of their funk. I think it'll be an attacking game because both of these teams like to push numbers forward and break quickly. So it should be entertaining.
I think so. I think Dayton's in need of what Orange County had last weekend as a really important win. Yeah. When Orange County was able to go out there and grab some points, I think it was really, really big for them. This is a tough road trip for Dayton. But they need to get something out of it. I think they're going to, it's not good if they don't walk away with any points between these two matches. Yeah,
you definitely feel like they want to get something out of Saturday's game because on Sunday they go and play the Galaxy 2, and obviously they played them to a 1-1 draw at home earlier this season. Mm-hmm. But the Galaxy on their home turf have been very tough this season, and and you want to think that you can see Dayton getting something out of that, but in all likelihood, it's going to be a home win.
Yeah.
Now, heading back to the East Coast, we have an interesting game at Salem Stadium where Rochester hosts Pittsburgh on Saturday night. Rochester grabbed a 1-0 win at Highmark Stadium earlier this season. Alex Dixon, I believe it was, who scored the goal. And this has always been a little bit of a rivalry. It hasn't been as strong a rivalry as Pittsburgh's with the City Islanders, or as Rochester's with the City Islanders, for that matter. But you feel as though if Pittsburgh is going to start doing something, it's going to start here, because to go into Salem Stadium and walk away with 3 points would be such a massive boost.
It'd be a huge statement.
It would be a huge statement, and it would be a huge boost for their confidence because Richmond has been so good, Rochester rather, has been so good at home this season.
Correct, and not just good at home, but so good defensively, regardless of where they are this year. The back line for the Rhinos has been so solid. It's had some good goalkeeping performances as well. Both goalkeepers have been getting a look there.
Yeah.
So I think it would be huge. For me going in, it's going to be all about that Pittsburgh attack and who shows up. They have some big names up there, including the league MVP and a certain former Dutch international on that team. So there's some big players that really need to step up for Pittsburgh this weekend.
If I'll say something, I will say that Jose Angulo always seemed to do well against the Rhinos when he was with the City Islanders. If he can recapture that form, especially the way that he used to play at Salem Stadium for Harrisburg, then they're going to be in with a legitimate chance of grabbing a victory here.
Yep.
Now, those are the games that we've got coming up this weekend. We hope you'll join us for all of them on YouTube, and you'll follow us along on social media at USL Pro. And you can also like our Facebook, Instagram, and Google Plus pages. David, are there any players in particular that you're looking to for big performances this weekend?
Yeah, I think, I just sort of allude to it. I hate to come back and be redundant, but mine I have written down here is Pittsburgh. I think Jose Angulo, obviously was such a huge player in this league last year, and Pittsburgh needs him more now than ever to step up and score some goals. So to come out and have that attack, it will be really, really important for Pittsburgh this weekend.
I think the guy that I'm looking at, the couple of guys I'm looking at, I already mentioned Adamo Mbengwe because I think he's going to be a key player. I'm also looking at a guy like Aaron Schoenfeld, who's been very, very good for Dayton this year. And if he can continue his scoring form, grab a couple of goals for them on the road, and get some good support from guys like Joel Delas, who hasn't necessarily had the strongest season so far, then that's the way that the Dutch Lions can grab some points against the Blues and make their road trip a success out west.
Yeah.
Now,
right.
Thank you. That's it for this week's edition. Thank you, David, for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, producer Ian, for putting all of this together. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. We would definitely appreciate it. Leave any comments or feedback in the chat box below on Facebook and Google+. At us, feel free to tweet at us at USL Pro with any questions that you have. And we hope you'll join us again this time next week. But until then, bye for now.